Hi, and welcome to TTELT, Teaching Tips for English Language Teachers, a program of educators worldwide. I'm your host today, Melanie Gobert.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the TTELT, Teaching Tips for English Language Teachers podcast. I'm your host today, Melanie Gobert. Joining us are Jessica Williams and Julia Dania, who teach at a higher education institution in Oman. And they're going to be talking to us about IDA, their initiative for designing engaging materials and learning programs to build connections between individuals and their environments. Over to you, Jessica and Julia.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having us here to share our ideas on your podcast. We thought we might start by telling you about the concepts behind designing a kit and tell you about the process that we went through. The idea behind designing an educational kit is one that museums have long embraced. And by creating an experience that takes the learning outside the classroom, students are able to engage with artifacts or the environment around them to interact with those spaces and with each other. So creating a kit is a practical and applied approach to learning, but it's also one that's designed with specific objectives in mind, depending on the student's needs.
Okay, so what are the concepts behind designing a kit, and can you briefly describe the process?
Sure. Well, we work in a college environment, and our students are being prepared to study in one of several engineering streams. So our process was to begin by immersing ourselves in a museum environment that we identified, and we gained the support of our leadership to empower us in doing the work. So we chose the Oman Across Ages Museum in Oman. It opened in 2023, and it contains a really wide range of topics within it, and all of them are related to various subject matters, from geography to culture to history to engineering. So we looked at all of that content over the course of several visits, and that was with a view to selecting artifacts and exhibits that were relevant to our students. And then we proceeded to design materials connected to those areas so that our students could access the information at their levels, both in terms of the language and the subject area.
Okay, can you give us one or two examples of the kinds of activities you have in the kits?
Sure. In the first task, we made two tasks. The first task was designed to orient the students to the museum space, and they had to follow a series of simple questions through zones that we labeled A to J, and they could identify those zones on a map. And that map was printed onto a folder, and they took that folder and worked individually to answer questions and prompts through those zones. And it was an individual task, but at the same time, it was up to them if they wanted to lean on their peers and consult with each other. So the first task allowed students the time to absorb and enjoy the museum space, and at the same time, it prepared them for the next task. So an example of a simple question would be, for example, look at the materials used to build this traditional ship in this particular zone and name one material that was used in the building of this ship. Do you want to talk about task 2, Jessica?
Yeah, absolutely. So the second task that we designed was aimed at asking the students to think more in depth about a specific exhibit and apply skills that are related to STEM and their engineering context. So pre-visit, the students were allocated in a group, an A, B, or C, and in their group, they worked on a task that was either a design process, a design system, or a design method. So for example, in group B, 5 or 6 students worked together to look at ancient irrigation systems here in Oman and gather data from the exhibit to complete a table in their folder. To start with, in this task, they had to reflect on questions such as, how does a fallage or irrigation system work? And then after they completed the data, or they gathered the data to complete the table, they had to look at questions such as, how do people get water in modern cities such as Muscat today? What are the disadvantages of these modern systems? Does the old irrigation system still work, and why? In order for the students to understand the concept of what it means to be an engineer. The steps in this group task were clearly marked out within their folder, and they were then the basis for a 5-minute digital presentation with 3 stages, which was given by the students post-visit in the class. So they could also recycle and reflect on their questions a second time.
Okay, now, we are getting into the age of AI, and we've already been in the age of digital technology for a long time. So how relevant do you think the kids are in the digital world?
Well, this was of particular interest to us. We looked at the outcomes of our kit, which was designed based on CLIL, Content and Language Integrated Learning. And by using this methodology, we were able to identify very high levels of collaborative learning, increased levels of engagement during the tasks, pushed output, and much better critical thinking skills. There was also some evidence of more intercultural understanding. So in relation to the digital world, we believe that in this world that is becoming increasingly filled with information, students are able to become less, they're able to find information so easily that they may feel they're becoming less dependent on teachers. But we believe they still need teachers to guide them, but guide them to do what? Well, our kit, we focused on teaching the students to think about the concept behind learning, teach them how to learn, and teach them how to use the content and all this information they have at their fingertips through the digital world, how to use it to the best effect, how to be inspired, how to be creative, and how to maintain the curiosity that they need to continue pushing forward, to be creative thinkers, to think critically, to want to learn. So we've identified a certain lack of motivation with some of our students, and we were trying to address this as well as guide them and support them through these tasks, through this kit, to lead them into a more academic and to better prepare them for their academic futures.
Of course, having a recent museum handy where you can develop the kits and integrate using them with the normal student's life is maybe exceptional. So, what other environments could these kits be designed and used for?
I can start with that one, and then Jessica can continue.
Sure.
Every time we step out of our learning environment in the classroom, there's so much around us in our environments, and it could be the natural world, it could be biology, it could be a cultural institution that is in your town or in your city. It could be a historic site such as a fort. There are so many artifacts around us that we just have to look at with different eyes. So whatever is in your particular context, it's really a matter of seeing it through different eyes in a different way. And perhaps Jessica would like to add to that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in terms of the, depending on your students' needs, it could also be something like a process in a factory, or it could be something to do within a business process. But it gives students a third dimension to their learning. It takes them away from a screen and a laptop and puts it into a really real context for them, which we believe is highly beneficial.
Okay, thank you very much, Jessica and Julia, for joining me on today's podcast, today's episode of TTELT, Teaching Tips for English Language Teachers.
Thank you
This-
very much.
Sorry,
Thank you for having us.
this has been your host, Melanie Gobert.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Share with us how you are using these tips. Leave us a comment or voice message on social media or at ttelt.org. Thanks for joining this episode of TTELT, brought to you by Educators Worldwide. Follow, like, and subscribe to TTELT on your social media, and try a new teaching tip today.